Hey guys, Al here, Vital IC. This is part two. Again, if you're going to want to really dive into this is a very in-depth topic in my opinion. I would highly recommend talking to a wildlife biologist. Contact the folks at MSU Deer Lab or some of the other universities around the country that are heavily focused on this topic and various others. You can even read some cattle research on stocking rates and things like that. It's not a direct correlation, but there definitely are some synergies there that might help you to further grasp some of the topic as to maximizing basically best quality forage per bite per animal. As we're looking at this chart, I just want to highlight that, when we start off at a very low deer population and a very high carrying capacity, so let's assume good quality habitat is associated with that carrying capacity. It's a pretty tight correlation there. You see a rapid growth in population. So as we work on our farms to increase the carrying capacity, if we're not harvesting does adequately, if needed, right? We have to use all the tools we talked about to assess that. But if we're not doing so, you're going to have to work harder in order to keep your deer herd under carrying capacity, or forever continue to increase your carrying capacity through supplementation of food plots, timber management, etc. Most of the time, due to just the vast amount of food that a white-tailed deer can eat, especially as the population's exploding, and also limited resources of time, acreage, etc., we're probably not going to be able to just continue to have no ceiling on our carrying capacity. So we're going to have a good understanding as to what that carrying capacity looks like through a lot of observational tools, trail cameras, hunting observations, exclusion fences. I do like to do wintertime browse surveys. Now we're doing some things with guys we've been talking about for this winter. Our farm's heavily forested. Doing some wintertime aerial drone scouting in order to kind of get an idea of DPSM specific to our farm, talking to neighbors, etc. So there's a huge number of things that you can do in order to get an idea and gauge as to kind of where we are or where you are relative to your farm. But as you look at this, so as your habitat gets better, your deer population is going to grow at a more rapid rate. So as you continue to do those habitat improvements, we have to continue to keep our deer numbers in check because your population is going to grow faster. Well, why is that? Well, because the deer are healthier. You're going to have higher fawn recruitment. You're going to have better fawn survival because of that. Not only fawn recruitment from the birth perspective, but also less predation because you have better habitat, right? And there's a lot of guys who talk about that with turkey as well, that predation, of course, is a factor, but habitat is arguably a much larger factor as to their survival and poult survival. Similarly with deer, it's the same idea. So that's one thing. The other thing we want to consider too is guys say, well, I just want a whole bunch of does. It doesn't matter because I just love seeing tons and tons of deer. And maybe the caveat to that argument they'll make is, well, I still see big bucks. Carrying capacity and time is one small piece of this whole puzzle that we're looking at, guys. There are also epigenetic triggers, as MSU Deer Lab references, Strategic Harvest Systems, the name of the book. I highly recommend reading that. That takes about 7 years, or roughly, I think it was 2 generations of white-tailed bucks in order to show an increase and or decrease in antler size. Now, we're not talking genetic culling or anything of that nature in wild deer. But what we're talking about is deer expressing their full genetic potential time and time and time again based on the best available forage relative to the carrying capacity of the land. So again, as your carrying capacity goes up and your population goes above that carrying capacity, if you are not... we're not able to go out there and say, hey, this 3-year-old gets the best food and this doe doesn't, or this 6-year-old that's an old buck that never grew a better set of antlers than 105 inches gets to only eat the junk food. We don't get to determine that. So what happens is you end up having all of the deer getting less desirable food across the plain. So what we would rather have is keep our population lower so that the deer that are on the landscape are maximizing every single bite with the highest nutrition available. Over time, again, a generation or two, which it goes fast when you're managing properties, you're going to look and you're going to start to notice, wow, not only am I seeing increased deer weights per harvest data, but also you should see antler size increases, etc. Now, again, the caveat to that is always scale. But lastly, when we look at this from a habitat perspective, these are things that we can do to make sure that we have really good hunting opportunities, still have plenty of deer. We're still seeing deer. We're not saying you don't want to have any deer around. So keep that in mind, and every farm's different. Not all farms need to harvest deer. They might just need better habitat so we can create that increase in population. But then lastly, that we do have those good species that we want to see for our children and our children's generation, being things like white oak. Is just one species that comes to mind in our neck of the woods, being that we have a lot of the maple-dominated and beech-dominated forests where deer populations are high, and oaks were not able to regenerate at the rate that they should. They're slower growers, not a lot of fire used in Ohio, and high deer populations in some areas that caused the oak regeneration to be quite a bit lower than it would have been in previous times and would be in more of a natural setting. So keep all of those things in mind. And hopefully this is beneficial as to why, if you're not, maybe you should do a little bit more observation on the carrying capacity of your farm and make some harvest decisions, or not, based on that information. So hopefully that was helpful, guys. Carrying capacity part 2. I'm not sure if I'll do any more on this, but let me know if you like it. Give us your feedback and check us out at vitalizeseed.com.